It's time for Waking Up with Wesley. Today's forecast and weather-wide discussion with WLOX First Alert Weather's senior meteorologist, Wesley Williams.
Waking Up with Wesley is sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for waking up with Wesley. I'm Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. So this morning we do have some breaking news. If you are just waking up, a new tropical system has formed in the Atlantic. So we'll take you right to the latest information in this morning's tropical update. And then after we do the tropics, we'll talk about our local weather, which, spoiler, it looks pretty dry. All right, so let's take a look at the latest on the big map here. There's Tropical Depression 7. You can see it located on the map, right in the middle of the map, basically, in the tropical Atlantic. That actually formed this morning around 4 a.m. Central Time, and that's where the National Hurricane Center currently has analyzed the center of Tropical Depression 7. They also have that forecast track that we'll take a closer look at in a moment, but you can see the 5-day cone brings it to just to the south of Bermuda by 5 days from today. There's also another area behind Depression 7 that we'll take a look at as well. So first off, here's a look at where the National Hurricane Center says is the center of Tropical Depression 7. They clocked that latitude and longitude at 13.7 north, 45.9 west, and that would put it in about this general vicinity. That being said, there might actually be some nuance to that, because when you look at the visible satellite this morning, you almost see maybe the sign of a different area where the center of the system could be. What if the center is up here? You know, we have the Hurricane Center where they have given us their analysis of a depression centered about here, but what if the depression is actually centered up here? This is an entire cloud mass that's undergoing quite a bit of wind shear due to an upper level trough that is producing a lot of wind shear. It's got a lot of dry air that's rolling right on into this mass of clouds. And so it, instead of having your traditional, circle shape of a tropical system, it almost has a little bit more of a comma or cylinder shape of a tropical system, very unusually shaped. But like I said, the National Hurricane Center, that's where they have analyzed the center. We'll see if that moves or not as we get a new update to the information, but it really is hard to really tell where a closed surface wind circulation is, and it does not really appear to have that well of a defined center from what I can tell on the satellite. But those folks at the Hurricane Center, they are the experts, so I'll defer to them on this. They say that a tropical depression is there, so we'll take their word for it, for now at least. It's not a very strong system with the minimum barometric air pressure at 1,007 millibars. The maximum sustained wind speed is only 35 miles per hour based on satellite estimates. And it's moving west at 13. There's not been one, to my knowledge, there's not been one Hurricane Hunter flight into this thing yet. So all of the information, all the stats that we have on it are basically derived from satellite products, satellite imagery. Now, once the first opportunity happens for the Hurricane Hunters to fly into that, maybe in the coming days, maybe later this weekend, whenever that happens, I'm sure we'll get a big upgrade into the information that we have to work with for this system. But for now, all we have to work with are those satellite-derived products. So here's a look at the forecast cone based on the current estimation of the center of that system. This is what the cone looks like. If the center is positioned incorrectly, and instead of it being where the Hurricane Center says it is now, and it is instead a little bit more to the north, that could actually wind up changing the trajectory of the system and changing the path. But for now, the cone that we have to work with is this one. And when we make it a bit larger on your screen so you can see the details, you can see that later today they are forecasting for Depression 7 to become a tropical storm. So perhaps later Wednesday, we could be talking about a tropical storm in the Atlantic Ocean. The next available name is Gabrielle. And then notice the forecast actually increases the intensity to Category 1 hurricane strength by the time we get to this weekend, as well as early next week. Now, I will remind you that a system before it, you might remember earlier this season, Erin was a powerful major hurricane out in the Atlantic, and it had a similar track that made it go on a path about like this, and then it actually threaded the needle between Bermuda and the East Coast and made a turn. So hopefully Depression 7 will follow in a path similar to Erin. I'm actually curious now if I want to overlay those forecast tracks. So I'm going to open this forecast map just out of curiosity to see how close that will be. And we'll also open this season so far, and I'm just going to take that track of Erin and overlay it over the forecast track for Depression 7. So there's the track of Erin. To remind you, it's the one right there. You can't miss it. It's the biggest storm that has happened so far this year. It's the only hurricane and the only major hurricane so far this year. So we're just going to click on that track, hit the copy button, and then come back over to this, and we'll hit the paste button. All right, so a lot going on there, but if you can focus, you do have, maybe we'll take off some of these labels for Depression 7. So there you can kind of see, obviously Erin was able to make it a bit farther to the west than what is currently being forecast for Depression 7. And like we said earlier, if the center of Depression 7 is not as accurate, then if it moves a little bit more to the northeast, then this cone might also move a little bit more to the northeast. So right now, as it stands, the worst case scenario for the East Coast is for this to not even get as close as Erin got. The best case scenario is that the center of the system is not accurate right now, and it will get reanalyzed, get pushed farther off to the northeast, and then this might turn north before it even gets to Bermuda. So some pretty good information there this morning that we can give you in regards to Depression 7. And this also holds true when you look at some of our computer modeling. We have our in-house computer model, the one that we typically show you for Futurecast. It's made by the company that makes our weather graphics. And I will point out that, first of all, what we've got here is the NHC track, but then the colors in the particles you see are the model winds with the Futurecast. And first of all, it doesn't even look like a depression. This is a very broad circulation. Notice the size of the circulation is basically like this. Normally for a depression or a tropical system, you'd have a much smaller circulation. So this is not even really looking like a tropical system on the model. It's just looking like a low pressure system, maybe even a mid-level low. And as we go through time, you'll notice, where do we find the strongest winds? Are they near where the National Hurricane Center said that the depression circulation would be, down here? Or do we find the strongest winds instead up here, a little bit more to the north? So maybe that gives even more credence to the possibility of this center shifting from its current estimation. And not only do we see up here with a yellow color, but we also see orange colors indicating tropical storm strength. So our model is basically suggesting that a tropical storm will be there later today, but it won't be where the National Hurricane Center says the depression will be. The National Hurricane Center says the depression will be in this area here, but the model says a tropical storm will be instead located over 150 miles to the northeast of where the National Hurricane Center is saying. We can fast forward this, and now we see that our model hurricane is still, our model system is still outside of the NHC track. So, does this mean that maybe the track is going to shift to the northeast? We'll see, but our model is outside, completely outside. Our model system completely outside of the NHC track by the time we get to tomorrow. It shows a tropical storm located around 150 miles to the northeast of the current track. And then we take a look at Friday, and it is still looking like our model system, model tropical storm, is located outside of the NHC track. So, oops, that's not what I meant to do. I meant my measuring tool. So that's over 200 miles away from where the Hurricane Center says this possible storm will be. So that's a lot of discrepancy. Now we're finally starting to see the model show a hurricane, because you can see that purple color there indicating winds approaching 70 miles per hour. So it's approaching hurricane strength for sure, but it's still not exactly where the Hurricane Center says it will be. Our model is over 150 miles to the east of where the Hurricane Center says that storm will be. So still, perhaps we'll watch what happens with that over the next 24 hours to see if the cone shifts eastward like our models are suggesting, and frankly like some of the satellite trends are suggesting too. So that was all we can show you about Depression 7. We'll have more to come in the coming days. We can also take a look at the area that's behind Depression 7, closer to the Cape Verde Islands. This is a separate tropical wave with a lower chance to become a depression or storm. And we can take a look at some of the computer modeling with that. It shows just a broad circulation, not really anything that well organized at times today, at times tomorrow, and at times Friday. Nothing that looks like we're seeing any of that concentration of thunderstorms around a well-defined center with a surface circulation. It really doesn't look like it's got that tropical system look. So that's probably why the chances with that are pretty low. The environmental conditions are only marginally favorable for development with that one. So putting it all together for your tropical headlines, TD7 formed in the Atlantic this morning. It's forecast to become a hurricane by this weekend. And there's also an area off to the east of it near the Cape Verde Islands with the potential to become a depression or storm. Fortunately, there's no local tropical threats for the next 5 to 7 days. Look, we could use some rain. We don't want rain from a hurricane, but we could use some rain because we are underneath a drought here. And as you take a look at the futurecast, this is another day that won't really have much hope for rain. It looks like inland may be a tiny stray shower, but overall, most areas might avoid the rain today. It's easy to see why when you look at the big pattern here, what we have going on upstairs in the air. That's why we're using the water vapor. Can you see that swirl that's offshore, or rather on the east coast? You have this counterclockwise pinwheeling circulation there. That is an upper low, and it actually is helping to push down a very deep upper trough down like this before it goes back up like that. So with this upper troughing across our region, what that's doing for Mississippi is actually helping to pull down some relatively drier air. What that's doing for Florida is actually helping to pull up some relatively moist air. So that's why on the rain map, what you're going to find here is that Florida is actually going to bear the brunt of the majority of the rain chances over our region today. Persistent showers over the Sunshine State in the peninsula, places like Orlando, places like Miami, seeing those higher rain chances on Wednesday. Meanwhile, on the Mississippi coast, we're looking mostly rain-free. This is a really nice morning though, and if you're a fan of coffee like me, it's perfect for that first cup. If you haven't had one already, I haven't had mine yet, so I can't wait. But we are expecting temperatures this morning to be in the 70s, which is perfect for if you want some iced coffee. It's also not that terribly hot even if you want a cup of hot coffee. So it's great morning on the Mississippi coast. You've got that sun shining this morning, and temperatures will heat up in the afternoon. We're expecting those lower 90s, if not upper 80s. I will say that we do get a little bit of a breeze off the Gulf, and that can help some of the beachfront areas to maybe not be as hot by a degree or two. But it's a nice day at the beach. Just, of course, remember your sunshades, bring you a nice, what do you call those? The pretty word for an umbrella, a parasol, that you could use to blot out some of that sunlight if you're going to be out at the beach. And again, these weather words you see here: nice morning, hot afternoon, dry pattern continues. Those words have been locked in for like the last week or two, and they're probably going to stay locked in for the next week or so. So there's a look at today. Plenty of sunshine. Sunset is before 7 p.m. We have now entered that time of year that the sun will no longer set after 7 p.m. You notice we haven't had any time changes here, right? This is a natural thing. Even if you destroy and blow up the time change and never have it again, the sun will still naturally set earlier and earlier as you go from summer to winter. And that has continued to naturally get earlier as our days naturally get shorter. Sunrise tomorrow has also been getting a little bit later in the morning each morning, and sunrise tomorrow is 6:42. And this change, or this natural occurrence, will continue every day until we get to the first day of winter. Then you get the reverse, where the days get longer and longer until you get to next year's first day of summer. And then you get the reverse when the days get shorter and shorter. It's a cycle, right? That's the way our weather works, in seasons and cycles. Now, of course, when you add in the man-made time change, which, by the way, happens 2 months away in early November, what that will do for us is it will make those sunsets even earlier. You know, it's going to make them fall back an hour earlier. But it will also, this is the payoff, make our sunrises not be so late in the morning, because they keep getting later and later. If you don't do the time change, if you don't follow those sunrises back, the sun might not come up until almost 8 o'clock in the morning by the time you get to December or something like that. So that's one of the reasons why you do that fall back around November, so that the sunrise remains in a very reasonable time. Those kiddos waiting out at the bus stop can still have that early natural morning light to help them find their way and to help you find your way away from them when you're on the roads and you're not going to get your vehicle too close to those kids waiting on the school bus. If you had really dark conditions in the morning, that could be dangerous. So that's a good thing to have that morning light. Anyway, we are also going to briefly touch on the rain forecast, which there's not a whole lot of for South Mississippi. But for some of you who have college football plans over the weekend, just understand that even though it's dry in South Mississippi on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the same does not hold true for our neighbors to the north. On Friday, places like Oxford will begin to see some rain chances, as well as Tunica, and this could continue into parts of Saturday. So for some of you who might be traveling away for college football in northern Mississippi, understand that places near Starkville, Oxford, Tupelo, those are all places that could continue to see some better rain chances on Saturday, although there could be some improvement going from Saturday to Sunday. Meanwhile, on the coast, there's really not much hope for rain. There's even not much hope for fall. I mean, fall, the calendar says fall starts on Monday. I don't see any huge fall cool fronts here, but at least we are getting some nice mornings. So at least we have like fall mornings, and hopefully those kind of continue into next week. Even though our afternoons aren't extremely fall-like, the mornings are kind of fall-like. If you don't step outside before 8 in the morning, you don't know anything about what I'm talking about. But if you are a person that wakes up earlier in the morning and you step foot out that door before 8 in the morning, you know what I mean. You know, if you know, you know. It is a very nice fall morning every morning. This morning we had a temperature drop to 62 in Escatawpa. That's 3 away from the 50s in Jackson County near the Alabama line. So, I mean, if I'm outside for an hour and it's almost in the 50s, I might consider long sleeves. You know, it won't last long. Once the sun comes up, it's gone. But if you'll be outside from 4 in the morning to 7 in the morning and it's in the lower 60s, yeah, that's definitely something to consider. And you'll continue with these kinds of things, these kinds of conditions as we go into the upcoming weekend. Well, that'll do it for today's edition of Waking Up with Wesley. I've been Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. We'll see you again next time.
Waking Up with Wesley has been sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.